All right, what's up, guys? Today, I'm making a tier list on the most well-rounded fighters in the UFC. The criteria is going to be a little bit different. When I'm looking at the most well-rounded fighters, I'm looking at how dangerous are they on the ground and on the feet. I'm not looking at well-rounded in a sense of, oh, he can fight here, he can fight there. Everybody's done that. I'm looking at how effective are you at finishing the fight. So that's going to play into this list. How effective are you at finishing the fight on the ground or on the feet? And you're going to see that reflect in this video. So let's get right into it. Starting off with Belal Muhammad. I'm putting Belal Muhammad in the C tier. Listen, Belal Muhammad, he's well-rounded. Every fighter in this video is well-rounded. Let me just say that. So don't get your panties in a bunch just because the fighter's in C tier. Belal Muhammad is in C tier. Like I said, he's well-rounded. He can fight everywhere, but he's not too much danger when you're fighting Belal. You're not going to really have to worry about submissions or knockouts or anything. You're going to be pretty safe on the feet or on the ground. He's just going to kind of hug you and beat you up. But when we're talking about contributing to the end of the fight, Belal Muhammad is one of the best decision fighters in history. So with that being said, I got to have Belal in the C tier for me. Let's move on to the next fighter. We're going to go with Deiveson Figueiredo. I'm putting Deiveson in the A tier. Listen, he's shown an ability to finish fights on the ground and on the feet. Really good striking, really underrated jiu-jitsu in my opinion. I mean, he's submitted some of the best. He submitted Joseph Benavidez. He submitted Alex Perez, I believe. Maybe not some of the best. It's flyweight. But he submitted a couple guys at flyweight. He's had some knockouts on the feet. He also KO'd Joseph Benavidez on the feet. He's outstruck and knocked out a few other opponents on the feet. He submitted Cody Garbrandt, and I think he's the only guy to do so. So, yeah, Deiveson Figueiredo shown to be able to get finishes on the ground and on the feet. Overall, solid, well-rounded fighter. I have him in the A tier. Let's move on to another fighter. Arman Tsarukyan. I'm putting him in the B tier. Listen, Arman Tsarukyan has really good grappling and really good, decent striking, and he's finished fights on the feet, but I know everybody's going to say, oh, dude, Arman's an insane grappler, and he is, but he doesn't really have a submission threat. He has 0 submissions in the UFC, and when we're talking about finishing the fight on the ground, Arman is not the most dangerous on the ground. He's shown he can control you, but you're not really going to have to worry about a submission against Arman Tsarukyan, and I'm not just making that up. Like I said, he has 0 submissions in the UFC. So, yeah, I got to put Arman in the B tier. Still one of the most well-rounded lightweights on the roster. Let's move on to the next fighter on this list. We're going to go with Cory Sandhagen. I'm also putting Cory Sandhagen in the B tier. Cory, shown to be effective on the feet, be able to get knockouts on the feet. He's shown to be able to out-grapple his opponents. Not too much danger on the ground, but he has shown an ability to grapple opponents. I think he has a submission win or 2 in the UFC. Definitely really good on the feet and on the ground. One of the most well-rounded bantamweights. Even if he can't beat the upper competition of the division, he's still very well-rounded. And yeah, not too much danger on the ground as much as so on the feet. So I got him in the B tier. If you're in the A or S, you're dangerous on the ground and on the feet in terms of finishing the fight. So yeah, Cory Sandhagen in the B tier. Let's move on to an S tier. Jon Jones in the S tier. Listen, nobody likes Jon Jones. He's ducking Tom Aspinall, but there's no denying that he has the wrestling, the striking, the submissions, the knockouts. I mean, he has it all. Head kicks, knees, elbows. He has a bunch of submissions back in the day. He has knockouts. He can fight to a decision. Jon Jones in the heavier weight classes is as well-rounded as they come. It's why he's known as the greatest MMA fighter of all time. High fight IQ, well-rounded. Can fight literally anywhere the fight goes. Maybe his only Achilles heel would be boxing range. That's where he can struggle a little bit. But like I said, he's the full package. He can finish the fight on the ground, on the feet. He's dangerous. So got to put Jon Jones in the S tier. Let's move on to another fighter in this list. We're going with my boy, Diego Lopez. I'm putting Diego Lopez at the top of A tier. Listen, Diego Lopez has really dangerous striking. And he has dangerous submissions, as shown whenever he fought Movsar Evloev. If Movsar wasn't careful, he could have got wrapped up in the submission and sliced his knee up. Luckily, he survived. And I do think Diego Lopez won that fight against Evloev, if we're looking at contributing to the end of the fight. Submission attempts beat control time, in my opinion. Either way, Diego Lopez has shown an ability to KO people on the feet and be extremely dangerous if it hits the mat. So I got to have him in A tier. One of the most dangerous fighters in terms of on the feet and on the ground. So A tier for Diego Lopez. Let's move on to another fighter on this list, Max Holloway. I'm putting Max Holloway in the C tier. As Max Holloway on the ground is little to no danger. You're not ever getting submitted by Max Holloway unless you're Cub Swanson like 20 years ago. Max Holloway, one of the best kickboxers in the UFC in the lighter weight classes. Really amazing kickboxer, and he's well-rounded, but I got to put him in the C tier because who has Max Holloway submitted in like the last 8-9 years? Nobody. He doesn't really get submissions. He's not the best on the ground. His wrestling's a little sus. He can get taken down easily. I think Yair Rodriguez took him down. Ilia Topuria took him down. Volkanovski took him down. So Max Holloway has shown he can get out-grappled in the wrestling. Maybe not submitted. No one submits Max Holloway except Dustin Poirier, apparently, when he was a baby. But yeah, Max Holloway, not too dangerous on the ground. Got to have him in the C tier. His striking is really good. So he is a well-rounded fighter, but C tier for Max for me. Let's move on to another fighter in the C tier. I'm putting Merab in the C tier. Same as Belal. Merab is well-rounded. He can fight on the feet. He can fight on the ground. But when we're talking about finishing the fight, which is the criteria of this video, Merab has nothing for finishing fights. His only finish in the UFC is Marlon Moraes, and Marlon Moraes had no chin. So not surprising there. But Merab has shown an ability to strike. Even with Sean O'Malley in moments, he was doing decent in the striking, which is funny to say, but he was. So yeah, I got Merab in the C tier just for the simple fact that he's not the best at finishing fights, as he only has, out of 11 fights in the UFC. No, 13 fights in the UFC, he has one finish. So well-rounded, but not dangerous. Let's say that. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. My boy, Islam Makhachev. Above Jon Jones, I'd say Islam, one of the most well-rounded fighters we've ever seen in UFC history. I mean, we're talking about a top 5 striker and top 5 grappler in the UFC. Islam's dangerous everywhere. He has a bunch of submission wins. He's KO'd folks. He's KO'd Volkanovski. He's knocked down guys. Really amazing striking. Really good head kicks. Really good boxing. I mean, Islam is literally the full package all around. Extremely dangerous if it goes on the ground. You're at a risk of getting submitted at all times or getting trapped in a body triangle. So Islam, I have to have in the S tier just because, like I said, anywhere you're fighting him is dangerous. He can finish you anywhere on the feet. One of the most skilled fighters we've ever seen, like a Jon Jones. So Islam in the S tier, I think, is more than fair, boys. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. We're going with Dustin Poirier. I'm putting Dustin Poirier in the C tier. Just kind of like a Max Holloway. He's a really good boxer and striker, but whenever it hits the mat, Dustin Poirier doesn't have much outside of submitting Michael Chandler. He hasn't really done much on the mat in terms of finishing people. And Michael Chandler lost that fight by submission because he has low IQ, not because Dustin Poirier is incredible on the mat. Dustin Poirier is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but we've all known he struggles against grapplers. He's been submitted in all 3 of his title fights against Oliveira, Khabib, and Islam. Granted, 3 of the best grapplers to ever grace the sport, but he still struggles on the ground if it hits the mat. Let's just say that. And if it doesn't hit the mat, Dustin Poirier is as dangerous as ever. But in terms of being well-rounded, he is well-rounded, and he does have jiu-jitsu, but I got to put him in the C tier. I'm going to put him at the top of C tier just because he has the most finishing ability. Him and Max at the top of C tier, they have the most finishing ability of these fighters, so I got to give him respect to that. But like I said, C tier in my opinion. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. We're going with Ankalaev. I'm putting Ankalaev in the B tier. Extremely dangerous on the feet. Has shown an ability to take the fight to the mat if needed. In the Jan Blachowicz fight when he got his legs chewed up, he was able to out-grapple and out-wrestle Jan Blachowicz. Not too much of a threat on the ground, but he does have the knockout power on the feet and has shown an ability to KO anybody in the division if they take a shot off of him clean. But Magomed, like I said, you're not going to be seeing him locking up any submissions. I don't think he has a single submission win in the UFC. So I got to have him in the B tier. He's in that middle part, kind of like an Arman, like a Cory. Like, he can knock you out on the feet, but you're not really going to see him submitting guys and such. So in the B tier he goes. Let's move on to another fighter on this list, Khamzat Chimaev. I'm putting in the A tier. Now, if this was a grappling tier list, Khamzat would be above S tier because his grappling is some of the best we've ever seen in the sport. But in terms of being well-rounded, listen, this guy showed an ability to one-punch KO people like Gerald Meerschaert, to outstrike people on the feet like a Gilbert Burns. Listen, I know it was close, but I think he did outstrike Gilbert Burns. And whenever it goes to the mat, this guy is as dangerous as ever. I think Khamzat people can say he's one-dimensional because he has such dominant grappling. But if we're looking at it, this dude has underrated striking. Khamzat is no slouch on the feet. He's knocked out Ikram Aliskerov on the feet. He's KO'd Gerald Meerschaert on the feet, which I know isn't that impressive. He's outstruck Burns on the feet. He can hold his own on the feet if and when it needs to go on the feet. Even against Kamaru Usman, he held his own on the feet because Kamaru Usman's dangerous on the feet, even up at middleweight. And Khamzat held his own even if he dropped the last 2 rounds. He held his own on the feet. He was decent. So I got to have him in the A tier because he is still dangerous anywhere the fight goes. He can put you out on the mat, obviously, and on the feet cold. So in the A tier he goes. Let's move on to another fighter on this list, Tom Aspinall. I'm putting in the S tier. Just like a Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall is dangerous anywhere the fight goes. Literally, he might be the most dangerous heavyweight we've ever seen in the UFC history. Tom Aspinall shows an ability to one-punch KO guys. Literally one-punch KO. Well, knock you down with one punch and then finish you on the ground like a Curtis Blades, like a Pavlovich. Shown an ability to submit you on the ground against Andrei Arlovski, against Alexander Volkov, who hasn't been submitted in the UFC outside of Tom Aspinall. And yeah, he's just shown an ability to be well-rounded anywhere the fight goes. He's dangerous. He can finish the fight. So I got Tom Aspinall in the S tier just because of the danger factor he poses anywhere the fight is. Let's move on to another fighter. We're going with Umar Nurmagomedov. I'm putting Umar in the A tier. Now, Umar has submissions and knockouts in the UFC, and just overall, I think he's dangerous anywhere the fight goes. I think Umar can finish you on the feet, and he can finish you on the ground. He can out-grapple you. In terms of finishing ability, he doesn't have the most finishes, but he has shown an ability to finish on the mat and on the feet. So I got to put some respect on Umar's name and put him in the A tier. Like I said, guys, you're watching this video. If you think I'm delusional, this is going off of how dangerous you are in terms of finishing the fight. So if you lack in one area and you can't finish the fight in that area, you might go in the B or C tier. That's just how it is. So don't come at me in the comments saying, oh, dude, you said this guy's literally well-rounded, but he's not. I'm talking about finishing the fight in terms of well-roundedness. It's a little bit different than just standard well-rounded. Keep that in mind. So Umar I have in the A tier. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. We're looking at Sean Strickland. I'm putting in the C tier. Listen, Sean Strickland, he's good, but on the feet. He's an amazing boxer, but he doesn't really have any kicks. Sean Strickland, not much of a kicker. He can outbox you on the feet, has some of the best boxing defense, and yeah, some of the best cardio. But in terms of ground game, listen, I know a lot of people talk about, oh, dude, Sean Strickland's ground game's underrated. Where is it at? What has Sean Strickland done on the ground to anyone? I don't think he has a single submission win in the UFC. If he does, he has like one. And he has decent grappling. If he gets taken down, as shown against du Plessis, he can get up. And he has been taken down again by Magomedov, I think, took him down. He can get up, but Sean Strickland offers little to no danger on the ground or on the feet for that matter. He can get finishes if the other guy tires out, like a Magomedov, like a Brendan Allen back in the day. But in terms of finishing the fight, Sean Strickland's not too dangerous, so I got to put him in the C tier. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. Kamaru Usman, I'm also putting in the C tier. Listen, Kamaru Usman has negative jiu-jitsu. I know he defended Khamzat's jiu-jitsu for an entire round, which is impressive in itself. But when we're talking about offensive jiu-jitsu and finishing the fight on the ground, I don't think Kamaru Usman has a single submission win in the UFC. And yeah, he is a good wrestler and a good striker, a decent striker overall, dangerous on the feet. But when it hits the mat, Kamaru Usman typically is a fish out of water in terms of offense. Like if Kamaru Usman takes you down, he's going to take you down. He's going to beat you up a little bit on the ground maybe. He's probably not going to finish the fight. In terms of submissions, he's not submitting you on the ground. So I got him in the C tier. Overall, good, solid welterweight, but I can't put him any higher because he literally has zero finishing potential on the ground. So, yeah. Unless he knocks guys down and then finishes them on the ground like a Jorge Masvidal. But Masvidal was pretty much out by the time he hit the ground. So I got Usman in the C tier. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm putting in the S tier. Bottom of S tier. Listen, Shavkat has 18 finishes in 18 fights. He's shown to be dangerous literally anywhere the fight goes. He can KO you like a Carlson Harris. He can submit you like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, like a Jeff Neal. I mean, this guy is the real deal. Finishing everybody in the UFC. I think he's going to finish Belal as well. So I got to put Shavkat Rakhmonov in the S tier just because of the danger factor. Anywhere you fight this guy, he's dangerous. And he can take you down. He can submit you. He can knock you out. So he has knockout power in his hands. So Shavkat in the S tier, and that horse meat hits different. We'll say that. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. We're going with my boy, Charlie Olives in the A tier. Listen, Charles Oliveira, in terms of finishing fights, do I go S tier for Charles? I'm going to go A just because Charles struggles against wrestlers. So he kind of lacks in the wrestling department. But in terms of finishing the fight, I got to put Charles in the top of A tier. I mean, you want to talk about offensively, one of the most dominant, one of the most dominant finishers in UFC history is Charles Oliveira. He goes through the finish every fight. And even when he can't finish, like a Tony Ferguson, back when Tony wasn't completely cooked, he can threaten a submission and literally nearly break his arm or hyperextend it. Charles Oliveira, one of the most dangerous fighters in UFC history in terms of finishing. He does struggle in the wrestling, so I can't put him in S tier because S tier are reserved for close to the perfect fighters. So got to put him in A tier, but is dangerous and one of the best finishers we've ever seen. Most finishes in UFC history, most submission wins in UFC history. So my boy Charlie Olive's in the A tier. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. Robert Whittaker, I'm putting in the C tier. Listen, Whittaker, he's good, right? He's good on the feet, and he's shown to have some of the best anti-wrestling. I know people say his anti-wrestling's overrated because of the Khamzat fight, but listen, Khamzat's just that good. Robert Whittaker has some of the best anti-wrestling and anti-jiu-jitsu we've ever seen. He's really hard to submit. That was the first time he's been submitted in the UFC was by Khamzat. He's really hard to take down. I know du Plessis took him down, but outside of that, nobody takes Whittaker down. Yoel Romero back in the day, maybe. But Robert Whittaker has little to no submissions on the ground. I don't think he has a single submission win in the UFC. Not too dangerous on the mat. Dangerous on the feet at times. He is more of a decision fighter. You're not going to see, outside of the Ikram Aliskerov fight, Robert Whittaker hasn't shown an ability to finish guys too many times. So I got to have my boy Bobby Knuckles in the C tier. He's still one of the most well-rounded fighters in the middleweight division, but the danger factor on the ground is lacking, in my opinion. Let's move on to another fighter on this list, Renato Moicano. I'm putting in the B tier. Listen, Moicano, when it comes to the grappling shown in the Benoit Saint Denis fights, he's one of the most dangerous fighters there is. Like, he completely schooled Benoit Saint Denis on the ground and put a grappling clinic on him and beat him pillar to post to where the fight had to be stopped. On the feet, striking, he can struggle in the striking sometimes, but he has shown an ability to get finishes on the feet against a Jalen Turner, and against he has other finishes on the feet. I just can't think of them offhand. So he has shown an ability to be able to finish fights on the feet and on the ground. I put him in the B tier just because his striking isn't the best. It's okay, but not enough to put him in the A tier to where he's like super dangerous in the striking and in the wrestling. So I got him in the B tier, shown an ability to finish the fight on the ground. I don't think he's as well-rounded as like a Umar, but he's well-rounded enough to get finishes on the feet. I'm gonna put Moicano at the top of B tier just because he can get finishes on the ground and in the on the feet. He can get finishes either way. So in the B tier, top of B tier he goes. Let's move on to another fighter on this list, Dricus du Plessis. I'm putting in the S tier. Like I said, man, Dricus has underrated wrestling. He has amazing grappling, and he has Looney Tunes striking that works. He's shown an ability to KO guys on the feet, to submit guys on the ground like a Israel Adesanya, and keep up with Izzy in the striking. And we know Izzy's a good striker, and du Plessis held his own in the striking against Izzy. He held his own in the striking against Whittaker and took Whittaker down and pummeled him in the second round. And yeah, Dricus is no slouch. Wherever the fight goes, he's dangerous. You're always getting in danger against Dricus of getting finished. And that's what I respect about Dricus. He always goes for the finish. He's not looking to fight to a point or a decision. He's looking to finish you. And he's well-rounded in that area. He has good submissions. He has good knockout power. Striking is but it works for him. It's effective. So can we really say Dricus has bad striking if he's knocking guys out and out-striking guys? I don't think so. It doesn't look the prettiest, but it's effective. He is at the bottom of S tier just because he can be a little sloppy, but nonetheless, all the champions are going to be in the S tier for the most part, just because that's the reason they're champions, is because they're well-rounded, outside of like an Alex Pereira. Let's move on to another guy in this video, Pantoja. I'm putting in the B tier. Listen, Pantoja has shown an ability to submit guys. I'm going to put him in the middle of B tier, maybe like right above a Sandhagen, because he is a little bit more. He has shown an ability to finish guys on the feet. Well, if you count Matt Schnell, I guess. But listen, Pantoja's a dog on the feet. He has solid striking. On the ground, he can be dangerous. He's submitted many guys in the UFC. Not super dangerous on the feet, and he's decently dangerous on the ground. So I can't have him in C tier where he has like no finishing potential, but he has some finishing potential, and he is a good striker, and he's a good grappler. So I'm having him in the middle of B tier. I can't put him A tier just because he's not dangerous enough to get finishes all the time. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense, like on the feet or on the ground. So I got him in the B tier. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. We got Jose Aldo. We're putting in the C tier. Jose Aldo. Listen, man. Jose Aldo is a black belt jiu-jitsu, but who has Jose Aldo submitted? Who? Jose Aldo seems like a fish out of water on the ground. I know people aren't going to like that, but it is what it is. Jose Aldo's always been a good striker. He has amazing leg kicks, really good speed, really good boxing. But when it hits the mat, Jose Aldo hasn't really shown an ability to do too much. Now, granted, he is one of the best anti-grapplers in UFC history. So him hitting the mat is very few far in between. Who got Jose Aldo down? Has anybody gotten him down? He got down by Max Holloway, but that's because Max Holloway knocked him down in the striking and then finished him on the ground. But listen, Jose Aldo, I was mostly talking about offensively. He's not really offensively great on the ground. You're not going to see him going for submissions or anything like that. You're going to see Jose Aldo keep it on the feet. One of the best anti-wrestlers. He's going to bust you up on the feet in the striking and probably going to win a decision against you unless he gets held against the fence like by Mario Bautista, that absolute coward. But yeah, Jose Aldo in the C tier. Respect to Jose Aldo. I'm not going to put him in the bottom of C tier. I'm actually going to put him all the way past around the max area because he's above Merab and Belal. Maybe not in terms of well-roundedness, but in terms of finishing the fight, which is what the criteria for this video is. I got to have Aldo above them because he can finish the fight. And a lot of people are going to say the criteria doesn't make sense. Listen, it makes sense to me, so deal with it, boys. Let's move on to another fighter on this list. We've got Movsar Evloev going at the top of C tier. Listen, Movsar, just like a Belal, just like a Merab, shown to be effective everywhere. And if the criteria of this video wasn't finishing, Movsar would be S tier. But listen, he doesn't get finishes. He has 8 decision wins in the UFC. He's 8-0, 8 decision wins. Shown to be decent everywhere. Decent striking, really good grappling overall, good jiu-jitsu, but doesn't show an ability to finish the fight. So I got to have him in C tier because we're looking for finishes, boys. Finish him. So yeah, Movsar in the C tier. Let's move on to another guy in the B tier, Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno in the B tier. Very well-rounded. Definitely can get finishes on the feet. Some of the best boxing in the flyweight division. But in terms of on the mat, he can scramble really well, but you're not going to see Brandon Moreno like submitting everybody in the division. You know what I'm saying? He's not too dangerous on the ground. He can scramble and he can threaten with some things on the ground, but he mostly just scrambles to get back to his feet so he can piece you up. So I have him in the bottom of B tier. He's well-rounded, but not finishing too many guys on the ground, finishing more guys on the feet. Let's move on to, in my opinion, who is the most well-rounded fighter in the UFC. Just slightly over Islam Makhachev. I'm putting Ilia Topuria top of S tier. Listen, if you know, you know. Ilia Topuria has, what is this guy's weakness? Maybe head kicks against the right opponent? Otherwise, he doesn't really have a weakness. He has really good wrestling, Greco-Roman background, insane grappling. I know people tout him for his boxing, but he came up as a grappler. This dude has insane grappling. He has insane boxing and insane power. Like, Ilia Topuria might be the closest thing to a perfect MMA fighter we've ever seen. Like, who beats this guy at featherweight? I don't think anybody beats him at featherweight. If he goes up to lightweight, I would pick Makhachev to beat him just because of the size difference. But man, skill for skill, Ilia Topuria might just be the most talented and skillful fighter we've ever seen in the UFC. Like, to knock out Vulcan Max back-to-back, submitting guys like Bryce Mitchell, who's no slouch on the ground. This guy is the full package. He is S tier for me. Listen, guys, this is my list of most well-rounded fighters. As I said, the criteria for me is going to be how effective are you at finishing the fight on the ground and on the feet. And so this is the list I came up with. If you disagree with some placings, let me know in the comments. I know a lot of people are going to be up in arms about this because they're going to look at it in terms of like well-roundedness, like overall. But I'm looking for well-roundedness with finishes. That's what I'm looking for. So just keep that in mind, guys. Thank you for watching. Thanks for all the new subs. We just hit 500 subs. So leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. Thank you.